Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, Mr. Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya. Smash the like button on this video. Hit the subscribe button. Guys, we will be doing a live stream later on tonight. I think there's some big news coming. I can predict it. I can smell it. I'm going to talk about it in my next video, but this video is also related to it. What am I going to talk about? There's been a lot of speculation about Mr. Canelo's opponent. I think we are coming very close. Firstly, I want to talk about Oscar De La Hoya, what Oscar De La Hoya had to say. Oscar De La Hoya said that I think Jermall Charlo has earned the right to fight Canelo Alvarez. Jermall Charlo has done enough to earn a shot, and now's the right time to make that fight between Jermall Charlo and Canelo. This is a fight that's been talked about for a very long time. Jermall Charlo and Canelo has been talked about, and I remember Leonard Ellaby saying that, you know, there's no way Canelo can beat Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo's all wrong. But Leonard Ellaby says that about all PBC fighters and all fighters. You know, he felt Caleb Plant would beat Canelo. You know, so he has that same energy, you know, towards every PBC fighter that fights Canelo. Well, Canelo's going to get beaten here. Canelo's going to get beaten, and it never comes to fruition. I do think it's a massive fight. I think some of you guys underestimate how big this fight is. I think some of you guys do underestimate how big this would be. It'd be a massive fight, Jermall Charlo, because Jermall Charlo's a big name. He's a big name in boxing. He's a lot bigger than Caleb Plant. He's a lot more well-known than Caleb Plant. He's got a bigger fan following than Caleb Plant. And you know that there's going to be a lot of people that would want Jermall Charlo to dethrone Canelo. You know, unfortunately, boxing is a sport which at times can be driven by supporting people from the same background as you. And look, that's just what it like that. I think it's probably one of the sports that have that the most. It's like when you're supporting a team, you're not going to support them because, oh, well, there's people from your background. You just like that team, or you live in that city. But in boxing, it is very driven by people that, you know, you're from the same background. And I'm like that. I support Amir Khan, and I was telling you yesterday how much I'm anxious about his fight and how much I'm so nervous. You know, I'm so nervous a month out. So Jermall Charlo will definitely have a massive following for this fight. And Canelo, of course, he has a huge following. He has a huge Mexican fan base, which is going to be supporting him come what may. You know, they're going to back him. I do think that Canelo should fight Jermall Charlo. If, like, obviously we've had that, you know, put out there that the boxing purists won't like who Canelo's going to fight. You know, it makes you think he might fight a Jake Paul or Kamaru Usman. I think Canelo's above that. I just can't see Canelo fighting a Jermall. I mean, I can't see Canelo fighting a Jake Paul or a Kamaru Usman. I just don't think Canelo, I think he's too much in his prime at this point, and I just don't think that makes sense. I think that's more for when you're at the end of your career, when you're shot to bits, not when you're in your prime. I just think it's dangerous. I think it would be dangerous for Canelo to fight somebody like that. I just don't think it's right. Yeah, I don't think it would be right at all. I don't think they should allow something like that, in the sense that, you know, those guys could get injured, man. Canelo's a big guy, he's strong, and he can punch. Yeah, that's not something that I think should happen. I think Canelo should fight a Jermall Charlo. Here's the thing. I think if it's Gennady Golovkin, I don't know how I'd feel about it. It'll still be a great fight, and I'll still be excited, but I've seen it twice, and I'm not really that interested in that fight anymore. Like, I'm not going to say that I'm going to be unhappy if it happens, but it's just not the fight I want. I would rather see him fight Jermall Charlo or a Andrade or a Benavidez. Fight someone new, also get another name on your resume. Look, Golovkin's a great fighter. He's a legend. And having a trilogy with someone like that can only enhance your legacy, because having a trilogy with someone like Golovkin is great, and it's great for your legacy. But I just feel like we've had those fights now. We've had 2 fights, and I just think Golovkin's on the slide. And I'm just not as interested in that fight anymore. That fight just doesn't get me excited like it once did. I think the fight between Canelo and Jermall Charlo gets me excited, gets me very pumped, you know. And pumped in a way just because of Jermall Charlo's name and the fact that I'll get to see Jermall Charlo in there with someone. And same with Billy Joe. Is that, and Caleb Plant, is like these guys. Caleb Plant didn't have that name. Billy Joe had a little bit more name, but it was exciting for me as a British fan to see, okay, how good is Billy Joe? Because he's never really been tested at that level. And same with Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo has probably been in with better fighters than Billy Joe had. And as Teddy Atlas pointed out, he's probably a better fighter than Billy Joe. Some may argue that, some may say no. Even though I think Billy Joe's style would cause Jermall Charlo a lot of trouble, maybe he's more talented than Billy Joe. Maybe he's more of a threat than Billy Joe. Some might argue, some may disagree. But I like the fight. I just like the fight because we get to see how good Jermall Charlo is. I don't expect Jermall Charlo to win the fight, but we get to see how good Jermall Charlo is. And that, for a guy with the name of Jermall Charlo, is very important for us, because Jermall Charlo of the last couple of years, for me, he's not been fighting the level of opposition that his talent, that I feel his talent justifies. And what I mean by that is, I feel like he's been fighting lower level guys and he's gone a bit stale. People want to see how good he is. They want to see him step up to that next level. And a fight with Canelo Alvarez, he'll definitely be stepping up to that next level. So I'm interested in that fight. I think it's a big money fight. I think it does over 1 million pay-per-view buys in America. I think it's a monstrous fight. And I think it's a fight which will get a lot of the, casuals out. I think a lot of casuals will want to be interested in that fight. I think it's a huge fight, man. I think it's a huge fight. I can't believe some of you were actually not that interested. Or it's a massive fight. It's a massive fight, Charlo and Canelo. It's a humongous fight. I am leaning to Canelo taking that fight, and I am going to do a video which explaining why I think that fight's going to happen. Next, there's a few signs, but I just like this fight. I want to see this fight. If Canelo wants to stay at 160, 168, I'll be honest with you, I'm not that interested in the Benavidez fight. Some of you are not that interested. I like this fight stylistically. I like the Andrade fight just because of the beef that them two have had. I'm really interested. I'm really interested in the Charlo fight. I think it's good for my channel, other channels, because I think I'm gonna get huge views for it. Canelo Charlo is gonna be a massive fight, and I think all the YouTube channels, not just the big YouTube channels as well, not the ones that interview fighters and stuff. I think it's gonna be good for them, because I think Canelo Charlo is gonna definitely, get huge numbers for everybody, not just the broadcaster that puts on the fight, but actually the YouTube channels, the media, everyone. It's going to do huge numbers because it's a massive fight. It's a massive fight, and it's two big, like, one's a mega superstar in Canelo and the other one's a big name. Like, Charlo can't carry a pay-per-view himself, but if you add him to a name like Canelo Alvarez, a mega superstar, you're talking about millions of when I say millions, I mean 1.4, 1.3 million pay-per-views. And when you think about America and you think about the pay-per-view price, that's incredible. Because that fight will probably be $70 or $90 or whatever it charge in America. And if it's doing over 1 million pay-per-view buys, that's incredible. The kind of revenue being generated. And I get America's a much bigger country than the UK. So, they're bound to, when it's a big fight, a huge fight, they're bound to do bigger and generate more money than the UK because we're a smaller country. But nevertheless, it's in America nowadays, the pay-per-view numbers are relatively small. When do you hear somebody doing near 1 million pay-per-view buys? Like for the mega fights, like Canelo fights or the Mayweather fights back in the day, you used to hear. But apart from that, you very rarely hear any good American fight which is getting over even 500,000 pay-per-view buys. Normally it's bad news about how badly the pay-per-view has done. It's like with the American pay-per-view, you normally just hear that the pay-per-views have done badly. Like, you don't really hear a lot of good news, in terms of the pay-per-views doing really good. And that's because there's not many names that are appeal to the casuals in America. There's a few names. Canelo's one, he's crossed over. Mayweather was one. But that's about it. You know, who else? Fury, I don't think, Canelo could fight anyone and do huge numbers. Right? Fury, in my opinion, can't, and I think the PBC executive, I think it was Tim Smith, mentioned this, that nobody would be really interested in Fury fighting unless it's Wilder. And I kind of agree. If Fury fights somebody other than Wilder, like a Ruiz, I don't think it's that big a fight. I don't think it's that big a fight. I honestly agree. I don't think the numbers would do huge. I don't think he'd do huge numbers. I don't think Wilder without Fury would do huge numbers. Maybe Wilder, Ruiz, possibly. I'd be very surprised if that does huge numbers. So the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that there's very few pay-per-view fighters in America over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. There's hardly anyone. Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Canelo, but there's not a lot of guys, and a lot of the old school guys, maybe your Marquez's, maybe your Miguel Cotto's, possibly. But I don't think in America there's been that many, and I think it's drying up. And I think Canelo is the only one really that can do huge pay-per-view numbers at this point, consistently. And I think a Charlo fight would be over 1 million pay-per-view buys. It'd be massive. And unfortunately, like if Crawford and Spence fought, that won't do 1 million pay-per-view buys, in my opinion. And that fight deserves to do 1 million pay-per-view buys, but they're just not big enough names. They're not big enough stars like that. So that fight won't do, in my opinion. I don't think that fight does. Be lucky to do 300,000-400,000 pay-per-view buys. You know? So yeah, I agree with Oscar De La Hoya. I think I won't say Jermall Charlo's earned the right to fight. I feel like he's earned the right in the sense that he's a credible opponent for Canelo. But if you go off his last couple of performances and the fact that he's fighting at 160, you probably say there's more people deserving of a fight with Canelo than Jermall Charlo. But Jermall Charlo might be the biggest name at this point out of Andrade, Benavidez for Canelo. And Canelo probably wants to fight somebody different. Now, Eddie Hearn said that Canelo is going to be sitting down and making his decision. And, you know, they'll probably sit down with Eddie Reynoso and go decide who they're going to go with. Over a cup of tea or whatever, they just have a pastime and having a cup of tea and decide, on the day, like, oh, I feel like fighting Jermall Charlo, let's go with Jermall Charlo. I'm feeling like fighting Andrade, so let's go with Andrade. I feel like that's how they are, because they can do what they want. They're in such a great position where they can choose who they want, and we know that they're going to choose somebody credible. We know that they're going to choose somebody that they has to be, because they want to do big. They want to make big fights, and I think a Jermall Charlo fight with Canelo would be huge. And I'm not sure, and this is just my speculation, just my opinion. I think that would be Canelo's highest payday to date. I think that he'd probably get offered his highest payday, possibly, if he fights Jermall Charlo. And I personally think that's what probably swayed him, because he's always wanted to fight Charlo. Because even when he was asked in a podcast, I think it was Brian Custer, I can't remember. I think it was Brian Custer, I'm not sure. He asked him in a podcast, who would you rather fight, GGG or Charlo? And he said Charlo. So he's always wanted to fight Charlo. But he wanted to go to cruiserweight and fight Makabu. But I have a feeling the finance or the offer or the numbers, with him fighting Charlo was so big and the money was so great that he probably thought that I can't turn this opportunity down. Even though, let's be honest, Canelo's made so much money, but I just think that the Charlo fight is probably so big that it probably be his career highest payday, and it's a very winnable fight. So why not take it? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what probably ultimately it comes down to. That the fight is just, it's too good a fight too big a fight, financially too lucrative a fight, and stylistically a great fight for the fans, I just think it's one of them where Canelo probably can't turn. Like, I just think it's a great fight. I think I would love to see it. I personally think Canelo edged towards Charlo, but I don't know. I don't know. I can't be 100%. But leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.